To Congressman from Texas, Congressman Ron Paul.
Delighted to be here today. I'm delighted that my wife is with me today. Carol is sitting in the back there. It's very good to be back. It is true, we tried a couple weeks ago. The weather didn't support us too well. Even this morning when I got up, they said, well, we can't go in because the wind is blowing too much. We'll have to go someplace else. And I thought, I can't miss it two times in a row. But evidently, the winds were calmed, and we were able to land safely. So we made it here all right. But to me, this is a very important issue, of course, talking about families and human life. Obviously, human life is something very important to me, having dealt with it in a very real way of delivering a lot of babies. As a matter of fact, I have a daughter. Carol, our youngest daughter, practices OBGYN now. But delivering an infant is, very exciting and very crucial and very, emphatic. But there's a legal matter involved too that I mention a lot when I'm talking to people who use the more libertarian type of argument. It's the woman's body, she can do whatever she wants, she can have an abortion and that sort of thing. And although I don't, detest the word and the term libertarian, to me that means believes in liberty, but I don't like them to use that argument that believing in liberty means that you can kill the unborn. And there's a good legal reason. And the legal reason is that I, as a physician, I had a legal responsibility to protect the unborn. If I made a mistake, did something wrong, I could be sued for that. If you're in a car accident and the unborn is killed, that individual is liable. So there is a legal entity there. There's no doubt about it. Also, inheritance rights are established at conception, not at the time of birth. So we're dealing with a legal entity. But one point that I like to make about the abortion issue is what we as a society have to resolve, and this is probably just outside the legal aspect, and that is, what is the difference between a child, a fetus, 1 minute before birth versus 1 minute after birth? Because 1 minute after birth, if a distraught young woman has a baby and doesn't know what's going on, and the baby's born and she throws that baby away, the police are called and she gets charged with a homicide. But if she had gone a day before, she could have had the abortion done and the doctor paid a lot of money. Now, where's the difference? And those people who argue, well, it's a woman's body, she can do with her body whatever she wants. But I think it's so emphatic to notice the difference. That's why respect for life is so important. And we have to understand where life comes from. Life comes from our Creator. It doesn't come from government. Liberty comes from our Creator, not from our government. And therefore, the purpose, if there is to be a purpose for government, the purpose is to protect life and liberty. And our Constitution is pretty darn good on that issue. It's protecting life and liberty, not by telling you what to do. That's not what the Constitution does. The Constitution tells the government what they're not allowed to do. There's a lot of prohibitions in the Constitution. That's why we should have high regard and high respect for the Constitution. I'm convinced if we would have done a much better job as a people and as a Congress obeying the Constitution, we wouldn't be in the mess that we're in today. Liberty, to me, gives us the chance to release our creative energies. The purpose for me in life is to seek and strive for excellence and virtue. That is personal. That is not a government. Even parents can influence us, but ultimately we as individuals have to decide what the purpose of our life is. And that, for me, is seeking excellence and virtue. But this can be done so much better in a free society where we are not impeded by the government. This provides us the obligation to be responsible for ourselves. And once this is delivered to the government, this responsibility to take care of ourselves, to cradle the grave, the welfareism, and whatever you need, the government's going to take care of. That relieves the responsibility of the individual as well as the family. I frequently refer to a biblical text in 1 Samuel in chapter 8, because in the frustrations in the early history of Israel, the Israelites were always debating, should we obey God or should we have an idol? And to them, actually, to Samuel, when they came to him wanting a king, he saw the king as being an idol. It was idolatry, because the king was going to take care of it. They wanted to get rid of the system of a patriarchal society where the family was the main unit and the judge was there just to settle arguments and disputes, but not to have the king tell them what to do and assuming all the responsibility. But the people came. It wasn't even just the elders. The elders sort of gave lip service to it, but the people came. We want a king. We want a king. And Samuel argued against it. And it's a delightful chapter in chapter 8, where he goes through a litany of reasons why you don't need a king. And we don't have a king today, but unfortunately I think we're drifting to the point that our big government is king. You know, the government tells us what we can do and be responsible for us, and if we don't have a house, they'll give us a house. If we don't have education, we get free education. If we're hungry, we get food stamps, and deficits don't matter. And if you need money, you print the money, and that we have this moral obligation to police the world. It goes on and on. The king will take care of it. But the interesting thing that Samuel did in this was to describe exactly what the king might do. He says he's going to take up your young women and young men. The king will tax you. And he says it'll be very, very costly. It's going to cost a lot of money. And I got to thinking, how appropriate could that be when you think today, if you can see that, you know, our big government is our king, think of what it's cost us. It's total out of control. And we have lost our confidence in ourselves, in our family, and in our God in order to make our government, our Savior, is going to take care of us continuously. So this is what we have done. We have rejected the notion that the family unit is the ultimate family, the ultimate unit to take care of us and to sort out our problems. But just think of what's happened to the families. Think of what's happened since the 1960s. In the 1960s, I was still studying medicine and in OBGYN. And they were defying the law against abortion. They just rejected it. We had the Vietnam War going on. I was in the service for 5 years in the 60s, know about so many of the problems they were having. There was a breakdown of a lot of our morality. Abortion became popularized, and drugs became popularized, and then the family unit broke down after that. Now, you know, I can't notice the statistics. It's probably like 60% of minorities have their children out of wedlock, but it's sharply rising in white families too, and others. So the family unit is not something that we have done a very good job of holding together. And quite frankly, although I've been involved in politics for a long time and talk about a lot of issues, war and peace and monetary and budgets and deficits and all, ultimately, you know, the most important thing to me, if they say, well, how would you solve the problem? I said, I can't solve the problems, and governments can't solve your problems. The most the government can do is obey the law, and if the law says the government is there to protect your liberties and put the responsibilities on you, that's the most the government can do. Then the burden falls on us. Then it falls on our education, on our parents, and our churches. And if we can't take care of ourselves, then like our founder said, if you don't deserve the liberty. A moral society is what is required to have this Constitution work. And now with the breakdown, the less moral the society becomes, the greater the breakdown. And so ultimately, I see that the family is the most important.